So as you can see, here I am at the Peterson Museum in LA. There's a Porsche exhibition on, which I've come along to on this very, very sunny and warm Monday afternoon, 29th of April. But before I ended up here, I went to see a certain Magnus Walker, who's just given me 2 hours of his time, a fascinating walk round of his collection, some real insights into what he thinks about Porsche values, what's inspired him. We talked about Singer, we've talked about his design collaborations, a lot of the stuff that's happened where he has partnered with the likes of Hot Wheels and Pininfarina and goodness knows who else. An eclectic, interesting guy, to say the least. We also talked a bit about business, which I think is perhaps something that he doesn't always talk about, but he's almost an accidental entrepreneur, you could say. So you'll see that in the forthcoming video. So anyway, have a look at this. Me and Magnus Walker, 2 hours in LA. Okay, Magnus, hi.
Top of the morning, thanks for coming.
Yes, indeed, and thank you for accommodating me, and wow.
You're welcome.
Looking at your quite amazing collection. So what would be really good is if we just kind of wander around and I can just ask you a few questions. But I guess starting with your inspiration, which I know famously you said in the past was your dad taking you to the Stuttgart Motor Show back in what that would have been
1977.
early 70s? 77, yeah. And as we were just saying, funny enough, we were probably at the same show.
Possible, more than likely.
Because my dad was a car guy, not a Porsche guy. He was E-Types, he was XJS's later on, Astons, and a few other...
Rule Britannia and all that.
Yeah, very much so. So not really Porsche, but your inspiration was the 930, right?
Yeah.
And I guess my question is, why? Why do you think it was the 930 that specifically caught your eye, rather than all the other cars that would have been there, like E-Types and Aston Martin V8 Vantages or whatever? 930
is just an iconic silhouette, and you don't have to be a car guy to go, oh, this looks awesome, this looks fast, standing still, wide-bodied whale tail. This is like the common...
It was the Martini Turbo, right?
Yeah, the white one with the red and blue stripe on it, which ironically, through the Porsche Club London, I actually got to meet that car in 2017 when I had my book launch. The exact car that was on display. Fast forward the next year, 2018, with Porsche, I actually got to drive that exact white Martini Turbo that was on the stand at the London Earls Court Motor Show.
I bet you'd love to buy it, right?
1977. What's that?
You'd love to buy it, wouldn't you?
No.
No, you wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't love to buy it.
Why? Why is that?
Well, it's like never meet your heroes.
Right.
So not everything is as great as it first seems. And the day I drove that car didn't drive great.
Wow.
So,
it drove below your expectations?
Not below my expectations. It just wasn't running great.
Oh, I see. What, the car itself?
Yeah, and the car was for sale, and the moral to the story is the car was a lot of money.
Right.
And I've never spent anything on anything I've ever owned.
You never paid more than $20,000 for a car? Is that right?
Well, I've paid more than 20 for a car, but I've bought a lot of them under 10.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, I bought my first Porsche in 1992.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in LA. LA is the car culture capital of the world.
Yeah.
America's Porsche's largest global market. They've been around for 75 years. The epicenter of Porsche's largest global market is right here.
So something like a third of all Porsche production kind of comes here, not just to the US, but to Southern California, right? Something like that.
I don't know about the stat, but there's a lot of Porsches around. And when I first got into them, well, I've been into them for 45 years. This is not a fashion statement I'm growing out of. But when I bought my first one back in 1992 at the Pomona Swap Meet, these things were affordable. You know, that's what separated Porsche from all the other European exotics. They were built to be driven. You see a lot of high mileage Porsches, or you did, until all the paint to sample GT3 owners got on board. But that's another story.
Yeah.
Back in the day, a lot of these cars were just really affordable. They were driven, they were reliable, they handled, and there are a lot of them here. So
in the UK, and I guess the US as well, a lot of people talk about owning Porsche and indeed Ferrari and whatever else on the basis of the investment case. You've never bought a car, from what you've just said to me off camera, on the basis of something that may or may not go up in value, right? Even though undoubtedly your collection's worth a lot more money now, whatever that number is, compared to what these cars kind of stand you in. But you've bought them just on the basis of what? Just your passion? And just the fact that you have an obsession with having a certain number of cars that reflect your... what was it famous you said once? You wanted a car of every year up to 1972. So that was the drive, yeah?
Well, the first goal was one of every year up to 73. But for me, humans like to collect. Doesn't matter whether it's stamps, guitars, watches, cars, art, right? Human beings love to collect things, rocks, stones, whatever it is. For me, I'm a goal-orientated collector. When it comes to Porsche, I'm front engine, mid engine, rear engine, both air and water cooled.
Yeah, as we can see from these cars here. Yeah.
So I just always acquired what I personally liked to own.
Did you have a list?
I wanted to experience.
A list that you ticked off? Like, I
No.
must have a 944 S2, I must have a 928, I must have a... No?
Not me.
Just stuff that came up and you thought that kind of fits?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of every generation when it comes to 911. For example, I've never owned a 356.
Right.
People are, why haven't you owned a 356? Well, when I was 10 years old back in 1977, I had the white Martini turbo poster on the wall. A 356 was not even a reference point to my generation.
Yeah.
That was the generation before.
That was the 50s, that was the James Dean car, right? The James Dean generation.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you first came in and you were telling me, you were waxing poetically about what you're going to do to change the Porsche Club London from that 7-year-old guy that drives whatever he drives with his name tag that says Bob Smith, Porsche Club London Zone 8.
Yeah.
And he's that stereotypical Porsche guy, right? So the 356 was the generation before me. Mm-hmm. So it was never a car I lusted after. Therefore, I've never owned one. But back to me acquiring things at a really affordable price. You can't acquire a 356 anymore at an affordable price.
Yeah.
And there's people like Rod Emery out there that make awesome cars, but they're kind of expensive.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm all about smiles per mile. I'm not about monetizing investment. I'm about memorable moments and things like that. So every 356 that I've ever driven, unless it's really been worked on, has never
modified?
been,
As in...
not necessarily modified, but just dialed in.
Yeah.
You know, I've driven a lot of 356s that are like driving an old Beetle.
But they don't inspire you?
I'm not saying they don't inspire me. Certain things do, like pre-A bent window. You know, people have been modifying Porsches since James Dean. You know, so Porsche's been around 75 years, 76 years this year. But the great thing about Porsches is they're easy to modify. You know, James Dean was famous for the modification of his car.
Yeah.
So the modification, outlawing, restomod, whatever you want to call it, is nothing new. Mm-hmm. Every decade, every generation of Porsche, all the way through, has been modified at some point.
Yeah.
So to me, nothing necessarily, I like to add my own personality to what I own. That's how I'm sort of become known, and this is a hobby for me, it's not a business. What separates me from everyone else who does great work is it's a business. This is a hobby, it's an out of control hobby for me. But me, it's just a passion thing, whether it's a 914, a 944, or a 911. I like adding my own personality to what I own. But not everything that I own is modified, as you'll see when you get in the garage.
Yeah. So let's talk about Porsche subculture, right? Because in Britain, there is this, what I think is a huge and significant subculture of people that like not just classic 911, but they like restomods, and they like hot rods, they like modded cars. Some in the Porsche community in Britain, and I guess it's probably the same here in the US, tend to kind of look down their noses a little bit at a car that's been modified, even if it's just been modified by way of suspension or wheels or a Momo steering wheel, which obviously you're famous for. But it seems that gradually, certainly in Britain, it's becoming more and more acceptable to have a modded car. And as a consequence, all of the events that now go on in Britain, the likes of Frank Cassidy's Megaphonics, Box and Gas, Porsches by the Lake, Flat Six, and so on, they're starting to really get traction in terms of that enthusiasm from that subculture. And I guess it's probably descended from here. I mean, I've just been to Luft, the air and water event that I think you were at as well on Saturday, and that was dominated, although this year was air and water. Kind of
Luft und Wasser. You need both to survive.
Yeah, you do. But traditionally,
as humans, you can't live without air and water, right?
What,
if you're out in the desert, you
need
in the middle of nowhere, how long are you going to last without air and water?
Yeah. So but the subculture here is astonishingly buoyant, and it's beginning to be like that in the UK. And I guess those two cultures, if you like, the more kind of serious, formal OEM, less than 5-year-old kind of Porsche fraternity, need to kind of live, I think, more side by side and be more accepting of guys like you and Frank Cassidy and others that want to do this kind of thing, right? And this kind of thing. Do you think we're getting to that, or do you think we'll always have a kind of them and us type of thing in the Porsche world?
We're already there, and it's been that way. Like I said earlier on, Dean Jeffries modified a 356, back in the 50s. James Dean had George Barris modify, his cars in the 50s. What you're talking about is actually nothing new. by my math, this has been happening for the past 70 years.
But do you think it's becoming more acceptable now in the general
the difference
Porsche
now
community?
is, back in the James Dean days, no one had a digital camera, YouTube didn't exist, no one was on social media. So, it's amplified instantaneously through people getting out a camera and pointing and clicking.
Yeah, do you think?
But what we're talking about, for me, I don't think is anything really new. It's just on a bigger scale.
I wonder if that enthusiasm for that subculture getting bigger is also the thing that's driven prices. Now, I know you're not into the prices. I get that, and I'm hesitating talking to you about sticker price or investment because I know that's not your thing. I get that, but it seems to me as I look around some of these events now, whether it's here in the US, I've been to 3 or 4 now, or in the UK, that enthusiasm for older cars now has just pushed prices up. That's why you can't buy a G-body, a decent one, for less than £50,000, or a 964 now in Britain for less than £65,000, £70,000. F-bodies are kind of touching 100k now. So do you think those two are linked? So the more enthusiastic the subculture, the more it's going to push prices up, and will that continue?
It depends how you want to tell the narrative. You can always go back to saying everything you just described was undervalued to begin with compared to other European sports cars. Like Ferraris, for example, right? In the 70s, the equivalent to a G-body might have been a Ferrari 308 GTB, right? Earlier on, GT4 Dino, the Bertoni-bodied one.
Yeah. These
were always 4 times more than 911's cost to begin with. So the way I look at it is Porsche were always undervalued compared to Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Maseratis, Aston Martins, right? So this is just the natural lift up. Sure, what you're talking about has helped out in that capacity. But you also got to look at Porsche. Porsche is now more than a manufacturer. They're a marketing brand. They're pushing everything. Currently, there's 27 different varieties of 911.
Yeah.
So you pick your flavor, whether it's a car you drove in, or whether it's the latest, greatest, whatever it may be, GT car, off-road Dakar car, whatever it is. So you can't say it's one thing about, cars have been modified, whatever it was you said earlier on about updated, backdated, trending, not trending. There's a lot of ingredients in this mixing pot of what now is really rising everything up. It's not one single thing of, people are modifying cars. Yeah, they're modifying cars, but so's Porsche. Porsche's in on their own game. Porsche's marketing everything externally at events like South by Southwest, and they're ticking all the boxes of everything to go beyond. In the past, the car sold itself.
Yeah.
Now they're just marketing to a wider demographic. So you also got to factor that into the picture of what is happening out there.
But it's a pretty crazy world when you've got, let's say, a 964 turbo at £150,000, which is now more than a 991 turbo. Now, I know there's a production difference, right? But that, the uninitiated, those looking into this Porsche world of ours, they're not going to get that. They're going to say, but that thing's 32 years old. That should have depreciated to almost nothing. But 964 turbos, like all 964s, and G-bodies and F-bodies, and I think soon to come, the likes of these, 944s, 968s, they've all out-accelerated and got higher than modern production cars that are maybe only 5 or 6 years old. It kind of makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, my daily's right there. It's a 2014 991 Turbo S.
Yeah.
So, wait till we get out. That way you can do it better in.
Yeah, I'll try. Editing not my thing, but yeah.
So in 2014, 10 years ago, this was king of the hill. You couldn't get anything bigger, better, faster from Porsche than a 991 Turbo S. This happens to be launch color, a rhodium silver metallic red interior, stupid center lock wheels on a street car.
Ceramics?
Which make no sense. Yeah, all the bells and whistles. I wasn't looking for a 991 Turbo S. Being back to a goal-oriented collector, I was looking for a 997 Turbo. My buddy Paul at the auto kennel said, hey, I got a car for you. I go, what is it? He goes, 991 Turbo S. I said, I'm not really interested. Wasn't a reference point, wasn't on my radar, new car. He goes, you're gonna want this one. I go, why? He goes, well, it's got 159,000 miles on the clock, one owner. We're gonna get to that in a minute, don't jump ahead.
Okay.
So, one owner. This is not 4 bros thrashing the shit out of it, trying to make 1,000 horsepower. This is bone stock, unmodified. This one owner lived in Newport Beach and commuted to Beverly Hills. He put 159,000 miles on this car in a little over 8 years.
Wow.
Now the crazy thing about it is this had a sticker price, and you're going to love this because you're all about figures and investment and, you know, resale value like your Nikes and all that stuff. All the stuff I don't care about. So this will make perfect sense to you. Had a sticker price of $193,000. This guy replaced the transmission, which was out of warranty. He didn't like to use the brakes. Apparently he liked to downshift, you know, through the gears. So at 120,000 miles, he replaced the transmission. That was 30 grand. This
The
had,
whole gearbox?
Yeah.
Jesus.
This had 50 pages of invoices. So sticker price 193. He's probably in it 250. So one owner car, remember, I paid 60 grand for it.
Wow.
Pennies on the dollar, $60,000. Now the moral to this story is nobody wanted a high mileage 991 Turbo S. The average mileage on these cars is probably 30 to 50. And when I first got it, I didn't really like it. I didn't get out of it and look over my shoulder at it. Sure, it was.
You didn't love it. You didn't love it.
I didn't love it. It wasn't engaging. I felt disconnected. In LA, they're pretty common. It wasn't unique. At first, I was going to add my own personality to it, but other than putting the black hood on it, I didn't do anything to the car. But what changed and how I fell in love with this car was it's as fast as any GT car in real world environments on real roads.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Porsche overbuilding GT.
Yeah, or drag racing or Nürburgring, stuff like that. No.
So you want to go on your favorite road, this is fast and engaging. You're stuck in bumper to bumper traffic doing 15 miles an hour commuting. This is the only automatic Porsche I own. The only one. PDK, you can't get a Turbo S manual. They don't make them.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that to begin with. But when you're stuck in bumper to bumper traffic, it's actually easy to drive. But here was the deal clincher. I drove from here to Moab, Utah, 800 miles in one day. I didn't get out with my ears buzzing, back aching, numb. This is the Swiss Army knife of 911s. Now, if you look inside it, has 183,535 miles on the clock.
Yeah. And a worn seat, unsurprisingly.
So what's great about this is the practicality. Willow gets in the back. You see all the dog hairs there. You can park it anywhere. No one really cares.
And it's still a cool car.
Yeah.
It is a cool car, which you've grown to love. You didn't love it, but now
it's my daily.
Now it's your daily. Very cool. Another car. So you're known as a Porsche guy.
That's true.
But you're not just a Porsche guy.
That's true also.